Hello folks, and welcome to Jack Reviews Musicals. My name is Jack and I am a musical theater superfan based in St. Louis, Missouri. This is my YouTube channel where I share my thoughts on all of the musical productions that I go out to see in the greater St. Louis area. And much like the last review, I'm all ready because I was also invited by Stray Dog Theater to see their final production of their 2025 season, Superhero, which is currently playing at Tower Grove Abbey from now until the 20th of December of 2025. The really interesting thing about Superhero is that it's actually an original musical. It premiered off-Broadway in 2019 with songs by Tom Kitt of Next to Normal fame and a book by renowned playwright John Logan. The production starred Kate Baldwin opposite Stolas from Hell of a Boss and was pretty much only notable for its projection design. Off-Broadway, the show received a lukewarm reception and since then never really went anywhere. What makes its reception really weird to me is that this was a musical written for young adults in mind, and I have never seen any discourse about it online. Ever. Superhero isn't even an underrated cult musical for young adults like The Lightning Thief or Dogfight. So when Stray Dog Theater announced that they were going to bite the bullet and produce the St. Louis premiere of this show, I was quite intrigued because clearly they saw something in the material that was worth sharing in the only way they feel they can. After seeing Stray Dog's production, I can say that it certainly does take off pretty well, but it doesn't really soar for me. John Logan's book does not specify a setting or even a time frame for the story. So in Stray Dogs production, director Justin Bean decided to set the show in the present moment in St. Louis in 2025 at Christmas time. The set, designed by Rob Lippert, shows a very convincing facade of a run-down apartment duplex. It's strung up with Christmas lights, there's a wreath on the door, there's a working fire escape, and even a spinning vent turbine, which makes this probably the windiest Christmas in St. Louis history. Outside of that, the production really does not take advantage of the fact that it's set around Christmas, except for the very final moment of the show. But I'm getting ahead of myself. What's the story? The main character of our story is Simon Branson, a 15-year-old inner-city boy. 2 years ago, Simon witnessed his father getting killed in a tragic accident. And even after 2 years, he can't bring himself to talk about it, or go through the steps needed to properly process his grief and trauma. Not even to his mother, Charlotte. Charlotte is an adjunct literature professor who has also been struggling through the loss of her husband, whose name is Mitch, by the way. Charlotte has never updated her curriculum, she misses classes, she's late for turning in grades, and she is severely procrastinating on a research paper on John Keats that will make or break her career if she does not make the deadline. And she's juggling all of this while trying to care for Simon and his needs. She tries to get him to be more open, be more social, actually talk about his father and the accident, but Simon is, of course, resistant. His way of coping with his loss is through an interest that he and Mitch shared passionately: comic book superheroes. As a tribute to Mitch, Simon has spent the last 6 months drawing his father as the Amazing Sea Mariner, an Aquaman, Submariner, Captain Planet type superhero who protects the oceans from looters and polluters. The environmentalism part of his comics actually comes from V, a girl that Simon has a crush on. She is in the process of leading the school's Sustainable Future Science Fair, how to save the world in 100 years. One day, Simon witnesses V getting bullied by her ex-boyfriend, Dwayne. Simon tries to stand up to him, but Dwayne fights back, only for Simon to then be rescued by V, actually standing up to Dwayne for herself. In admiration for her badassitude, Simon offers to create an educational comic to present to the science fair, to which V agrees, starting an actual connection between the two. While that's going on, Simon has also been trying to force a connection between Charlotte and Jim, the shy bus driver from apartment 4B. As the three of them are trying to get each other's vibe, Simon notices that Jim is extremely awkward, not picking up basic human social cues that are so far from common sense that it's baffling. It's not until one night when Simon is spying on a dinner date between Charlotte and Jim that he makes the ultimate ultimate realization. The date totally collapses when Jim suddenly storms off, looking like he's having a panic attack, clutching his head, a shortness of breath, kind of like he's hearing voices. Moments after Jim storms out, Simon sees him again on the roof. Jim goes to the edge of the building, strips off his clothes, to reveal he's wearing a super suit underneath. And Jim jumps off the roof and flies into the sky, disappearing as a streak of light. And that's when Simon makes the connection that Jim is a superhero, an actual, real-life superhero, not just in his imagination. Simon realizes this is his opportunity to be something that he could never be to his own father. A proper sidekick. But is Simon's fantasies about Jim too good to be true? Are Jim's powers really like superheroes in the movies? Is the Sea Mariner comic really just an excuse for Simon not to relive his father's death? And what about V? Simon is essentially using her as a way to avoid processing grief too. What about his distancing himself from Charlotte and all of the ways that he projects his insecurities onto her? Or maybe the real question that we should be asking here is Simon trying to look for a genuine human connection about his father the way that he wants to remember him in all the wrong places? Superhero operates under pretty much the same school of musical theater writing as Dear Evan Hansen. It raises a lot of questions about how young people seek or avoid human connections in the modern era, but it never gives easy answers. The book by John Logan is loaded with intensely gripping drama. There are very few moments of levity in this. I am someone who can speak authentically to the experiences of the characters in this show. I, like Simon, very recently lost a parent, and their death was very sudden and extremely public. And all of the talks, all of the fears, all of the things that were done to process that trauma are represented properly in this show. It was actually a pretty cathartic experience watching Superhero. I even saw myself not just as Simon, but also as Charlotte and even Jim. It was a very powerful thing to see myself reflected in these characters in this way that I think a lot of other people can relate to as well. I am convinced that, like Dear Evan Hansen, Superhero can save lives. Unfortunately, Superhero suffers from the exact same problem that I had with the musical version of Little Miss Sunshine. The show is great, except for all of the parts where the characters are singing. Much of Tom Kitt's score, especially in Act 1, is very weak. The songs in the show kind of sound like they were next to normal rejects. Mostly down-tempo emotional ballads sung by Simon and Charlotte. A lot of these songs sound samey, with very little variation in the melody, the phrasing, the arrangement, and very repetitive, often repeating the same lyrics again and again in either to fill out time or make them feel like radio songs. And I think that was just the wrong way to go about telling this story. I mean, Next to Normal does it too, but the construction of those songs were far superior. They don't achieve the same level of depth of emotion as the book does. Superhero joins the ranks of musicals like Little Miss Sunshine. Musicals that should not have been musicals. Superhero would have been much better as a piece of theater if it was a play with music. They could still keep music with those triumphant superhero theme motifs, especially in the sequences where we peer into Simon's imagination creating these comics. And it would also show how his perception of superheroes changes as the play progresses. It would have gone a lot deeper into the issues being addressed and developed the characters better. Where they were going with this was so powerful, it was so resonant, relevant, relevant. It was so emotionally affecting. I really wanted to see how profoundly insightful superhero could get. But Tom Kitt's lackluster score really hindered John Logan's work here. And I think Justin Bean's directing of Stray Dogs' production kind of reflected that disparity, really suffering in some areas. Most of the book scenes were acted in such a way that it made what is really a well-written musical theater book sound stilted and awkward. Even the scenes that were meant to sound casual. Jay Boykin as Simon gets overexcited way too easily, making the moments where he is moody and brooding, especially the early scenes where he lashes out at his own mother, come out of left field. When Jim is introduced, Aaron Fisher makes him sound like an alien way too much, making the twist that he is a superhero really fall flat. Justin Buchard played Dwayne in this production, and he looks way too old to be playing a high school bully. His portrayal of what was supposed to be a threatening character was laughably stereotypical, over the top. Maggie Nold as V's best friend Rachel was so bland and so forgettable, which I don't blame Nold for. It's just that Rachel ended up being kind of a pointless character by the end of the story. Todd Garton as Vic, the apartment superintendent, was as stiff as a bored. What was supposed to be a curmudgeon that was starting to be nice after discovering Simon's interest in comics was portrayed as Garton as too amiable, too lilting, and too nebbish. Vic's progression was really lacking. There were three actors who I thought were consistently good in this. One was Kevin Hester, who plays a brief but earnest performance as Mr. Fulton. He's the dean of Charlotte's University, who shows genuine concern for Charlotte's personal life and how it's affecting her career and her future. Lindsay Grosjean plays V, and she does well to convey that spunky attitude that eventually melts away to reveal a warmth and a kindness when she's developing her relationship with Jay Boykin's Simon. And finally, there's Sarah Jean Dowling as Charlotte, whose performance is so full of emotional depth, navigating the uncertainty of her future, genuine concern for Simon, and the real confusion that she feels about whether or not she is ready to move on from Mitch. Dowling's performance as Charlotte was so brilliant, so nuanced. As for the rest of the directing, I felt that the scene changes, which were underscored, went on for way too long. There were even stretches of time where the music was playing and we were seeing literally nothing happening. Even the choreography by Sarah Ray Womack, it was barely noticeable in this. It's not even worth mentioning. Justin Bean also designed these show's projections, and from a conceptual standpoint, they were really cool. There's some moments in the show where we peek into Simon's imagination and he shows the audience the progress of his comic. And as we probe into his brain, the projections envelop the entire set, portraying different panels and different characters on different sides of the set. During the comic sequences, there were cool dissolve and splash effects. When Jim's powers are activated, there's some nice water wave effects. And there was nice work from lighting designer Tyler Denow to create fantastical, colorful, comic-style imagery. Bean and Denow worked together to create some cool moments of theatrical trickery, like a cinematic split screen that's done live on stage, Jim flying away as a streak of light, and the final stage tableau of the production was so brilliant it almost brought me to tears. The key word being almost, because the projections really did not achieve their full emotional effect. And the precise reason for that was because the images used to portray the hand-drawn comic were created using generative AI. And it's extremely obvious that it was, using the kind of model that generates pictures for kids' books or Studio Ghibli OCs. The images were very polished, very glossy, and even showed uncanny resemblances to the actors whose drawings were supposed to be analogs of. These things are nowhere near hand-drawn, no matter how many sketchy cross-hatchings you put in the line work. When that first image of the Sea Mariner was projected on the duplex's facade, I was laughing for all the wrong reasons. I had this exact problem with Tesseract's production of Anastasia last year. At this point, I want to make something clear. In my opinion, using AI to generate images that could have easily just have been hand-drawn and scanned digitally is just plain lazy. And I'm really hesitating to use this word, theft? Now let me make something clear too. Justin Bean himself is a talented visual artist. I've seen his graphic designs for Stray Dogs marketing, and he does some really cool illustrations. But if he does have the skill to create those drawings himself, why would he use AI in the first place? I'm confounded. Maybe it would have been easier to commission a teenager, a high school student who is actually a talented illustrator in the St. Louis area. They could have hand-drawn Simon's comic to simulate his drawing style. That decision would have shown so much more respect for the drawn line and the imperfections of young artistry, instead of what we got. Overly polished, uncanny valley slop. And I know, I'm being mean, but that's what it is. Let's call a spade a spade. Draw a line in the sand. We need to make this perfectly clear because I can't believe that I have to say this in December of 2025 that generative artificial intelligence has no place in art, especially live theater. There's a reason why New Line Theater is producing We Will Rock You next summer. Google what that show is about if you want to know why I bring it up. Rounding out the crew are Colleen Mickelson, who designed the naturalistic costumes for the production, telling the stories of every character nicely, including the very brief suggestion of Jim's supersuit, and the superhero t-shirt and hoodie combo from Simon that inspired my outfit here. And finally, there's Mallory Golden as the musical director, who, even though Tom Kitt's score leaves little to be desired, still led the band and played the keys with gusto, matching the emotional demands of the story perfectly, including a very nice use of a triumphant-sounding French horn played by John Gerdes. The rest of the always excellent Stray Dog band consists of Zach Kempen on guitar, Paul Rushoff on cello, Joshua Ryan on the bass, G. Schmeideke on the violin, Ann Stevenson on percussion, and Brandon Thompson on the reeds. Even though I didn't care for a lot of the acting in this production, there were some strong highlights from the main male actors. For example, Jay Boykin's portrayal of Simon narrating his comic was a delight. His enthusiasm, his buoyancy, his passion. He conveys Simon's natural abilities as an artist and a storyteller incredibly well. I kinda thought the moments where he went gaga over V were kinda cute, and the chemistry that Boykin has with Lindsay Grosjean was very sweet. But Boykin's dynamic with Sarah Jean Dowling as Charlotte, it felt so authentic to a real child-parent dynamic, the kind that is being forced into this tough situation. These two actors worked off of each other like fireworks. And the same thing can be said from Boykin and Aaron Fisher as Jim. Their relationship really gets going in Act 2, and Boykin's forcefulness of wanting to be Jim's sidekick was so palpable. And Fisher does eventually settle into Jim, becoming a lot more subtle with his alienness and doing well to portray Jim's real conflict between staying true to his earthly mission and letting down Simon and Charlotte by leaving them. I also really liked the evolution of the chemistry between Sarah Jean Dowling and Aaron Fisher, starting as being really cringy and awkward to being charmed to being frustrated and finally to a semblance of love and understanding. The last third of the show was where I thought Stray Dog really upped their game, at least in terms of the dynamic between Boykin, Dowling, Fisher, and Grosjean. The four of these actors worked together to craft moments of really great drama. They really forced me to confront all of the difficult talks and emotions that they were navigating head on, and it was all pure, raw emotion. The climax of the show even forced Jay Boykin to release this blood-curdling anguished scream that evoked pure agony. It rattled me to my core, and it led to an ending that was so impactful and so important. The final moments between Jay Boykin and Sarah Jean Dowling in Stray Dog's production of Superhero really stuck the landing. It makes me all the more frustrated that Superhero overall does not fly high at all. This is one of those shows where the whole is far, far greater than the sum of its parts. And in particular, Stray Dog's production, they had elements that really did not work, but it ultimately led to an experience where the ending really rewarded you. The questions that Superhero asks about loss, relationships, altruism, and even art were ones that I needed to be asked. And there's a lot of people too that need to be asked these questions. And I like that the show really left it up to us to find the answers. I'm still trying to find those answers. And I'm glad that Superhero pushed me in the right direction. But again, it's not a great musical. I don't even think it needed to be a musical. It would have been so much better as a play with music. And I don't even think a decent chunk of Stray Dog's production really lived up to the explosiveness of the three central characters, the ambition of its visuals, or the effectiveness of the ending. But this production came at a time when what the show was trying to say really hit close to home for me. So to that end, Superhero is a musical that I wouldn't wish out of existence. But on the other hand, the show that I am going to be covering for my final review of the year, I got some choice words for that one that you do not want to miss. And if you thought this review was kinda negative, ooh, you ain't seen nothing yet, folks. But now I want to hear from you. Did you see Stray Dog Theater's production of Superhero? If so, what did you think about it? Whatever it is, whatever you think, comment below and let me know. If you enjoyed hearing my thoughts on Stray Dog's production of Superhero, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss any more St. Louis musical theater productions coming very soon. Thank you so much to Stray Dog Theater for inviting me to see Superhero. And thank you so much for watching this video. Until next time, long live the musical. Now, if you'll excuse me, somebody needs help, and this is a job for Superfan.